I'm getting ready to move into an HOA. This is just an example. I already live in a mandatory HOA. I'm a buyer. I'm getting ready to move into an HOA. Should I just take whatever documents come with it? Should I request a copy of the documents and read them? Like, what should I do to make sure that I don't get any surprises?
Yeah, there's a couple of things you should do. One, you should ask for a copy of the governing documents,
Okay.
which would be the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or whatever name they use. They're different names.
Yep.
In a condominium, they're normally called the Declaration of Condominium.
Yep.
And then there's a companion document that's called the bylaws, which is how the corporation operates. You should get both of those.
Yep.
They might have a set of published guidelines or rules. Be a good idea to get a hold of those.
Like architectural guidelines, you're saying?
Architectural guidelines. It could be guidelines for the pool or guidelines for tennis. I mean,
outline of behavior.
If you're a big tennis player and you find out you don't like the way they schedule the tennis courts, that might be a problem for you. So just saying, you got to know. The other thing that everybody should get, particularly someone who's purchasing a condominium, is they should get a set of the financials and understand the financial condition of the association. And as I said, particularly condos, because the condominium is the one that owns the building. That's the organization that owns the building. And so you need to be sure that there's sufficient reserves to be able to properly maintain the building. And that's a big problem in some states right now.
Oh, in Florida, the whole...
In Florida, it's precipitating a crisis.
Yes, a real estate crisis. The whole building collapsed. I think I'm saying this right, but if you want to know whether or not they have adequate reserves for the long term, I think that's called a reserve study. And so would it be appropriate to say, give me the financials and a reserve study? Because I think in some cases they're required to have reserve studies now. Am I wrong?
They're not required by law.
Okay.
In Georgia, they're not required. In Florida, they are, but they're not required in Georgia. But the lender, if you're going to have a mortgage, the lender is going to want to see it.
Okay.
They're going to want to see all those documents I just mentioned, and somebody's going to pay for them. I don't know who, that's kind of buyer-seller issue, but the lender's going to want to see it because they're going to want to know that the association's in good financial shape too. And then the thing that I would do if I was a buyer is I would find somebody who actually knows what they're looking at in those documents. When I moved to Atlanta, I had lived in a big association in New Jersey before I got transferred to Atlanta.
Okay.
And I got my set of covenants, and I had my real estate agent fix me up with a lawyer, like you suggested. And I paid him for an hour of his time, and he went through the covenants and said, do you understand? It means this, it means this, it means this. And there were a couple of things in there I wasn't all that thrilled about.
You were like, whoa.
Okay, I really wasn't. But at least I knew what I was getting into.
How do you think AI will be applied in the community association management world? You say you're already seeing some of it creep in, and I'd be interested in knowing what's happening and then what you think will happen over the years.
I'm going to say technically savvy managers started using AI to generate correspondence to homeowners. Write me a letter with blah, 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 blah. You define the parameters to chat GPT, and it comes up with some text, and then you have to go in and clean it up. The next phase that we're seeing right now is that the software providers, and there's about maybe 6 to 10 big national software providers for our management companies. Okay. We all use some kind of platform. And those software platforms are starting to integrate AI into their platforms. As a matter of fact, the software we use, they released their AI version this year. And it's got query capabilities for homeowners to go in and ask questions and get answers that are extracted from the database that we build up of documents and rules and correspondence and stuff like that. The thing that's slowing down the effective use of that is that and I don't know if your listeners all understand how AI works, but when you use ChatGPT, it uses everything that anybody's ever given it to answer those questions that you ask it, or to produce the documents, the generative AI. In our case, if you go in and you ask a question about how does my association do such and such, we have to build a database that's limited to the information that's about your association. Okay. The covenants from my other clients are not going to do any good when you ask about your pool rules. That's slowing down the management company adoption side of it a little bit, because we have to, I'm going to use the term clean up, but organize and build a reliable database for our clients to rely on. But it's coming.